Hello, I'm Frank Holland, anchor of Worldwide Exchange. Thank you for watching CNBC.com. Today, SAP and Databricks are announcing a new partnership they say will turbocharge business AI. SAP is announcing a new product that they're going to call Data Cloud that will embed Databricks tech for data engineering, machine learning, and AI workloads. Joining me now to discuss what this really means for enterprise use of AI is Ali Ghodsi, CEO of Databricks. Ali, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Excited to be here.
All right, so Ali, let's get to it. We see a lot of partnerships between big tech companies and AI startups. SAP is calling this deal landmark because your data lakehouse architecture will be embedded into their software with a real focus on ERP or enterprise resource planning. I want to ask you, what capabilities will this partnership enable that will separate it from other Copilot and agentic AI offerings?
Yeah, I think for us, this is game changing. We've been working on it 1 year with Christian Klein, the CEO of SAP. And this is sort of an OEM, or white label as it's called, which is the whole product appears inside SAP, so all of Databricks. So the way I think about it is the most important enterprise data on the planet today is actually SAP data. It's sitting in these enterprise resource planning systems. And now you're marrying it with the best data platform in the market, which is Databricks. So for me, it's a marriage made in heaven.
All right, so you have a lot of insight into AI and some modesty calling Databricks the best platform. I want to ask you and just get really granular with this. I did talk to SAP about it. But again, the focus is going to be on ERP software using copilots and agents at the same time. When we're looking at your lakehouse architecture, what is it going to help them do that they couldn't otherwise do with some other AI company?
Yeah, so Databricks is really great at mixing data warehousing. So that's like one aspect. And we have these people using it for data warehousing with AI and machine learning. And the reason is this lakehouse architecture lets you blend structured data that people historically use for BI workloads, which is the kind of stuff that tells you about the past, together with unstructured data, which is the main data source for AI, right? These texts and, natural language and those kind of things. So Databricks lets you blend these two. But the crux is the most important data is the business data. So it's the data that's sitting inside of these businesses, the ledgers and the financial systems and the supply chains. That data is sitting in SAP. And really, these two, you could never really combine them in the market. Whether it's Databricks or some other vendor, they were kind of siloed. So by bringing them together and then having this SAP Business Data Cloud, you now get one platform where you have that data, and now the data scientists can go ahead and build agents that actually learn on that data. We call this data intelligence. The AI understands the data that you have inside SAP. If you take the AI in the industry today, oftentimes it's great about answering anything about history or anything that's on the web, but it can't answer questions about the specific proprietary data that you have in your enterprise. This will enable that.
All right, so it's going to enable that. I want to talk to you about the investor aspect. Investors always want to know, when companies announce these partnerships or make investments, what is it going to do? So is this going to help SAP reduce its workforce or perhaps pivot workers to other functions? Is it going to increase margins in this business? SAP, again, the leading provider of ERP software with about a quarter of the global market share. What is the impact that this partnership is going to have on the investor angle when we're looking at the balance sheet or just how this company performs?
Yeah, I think it's going to be revenue accretive, right? Because I think this will be a very strong statement in the data space, right? Mm-hmm. So they've already owned the business. Business loves SAP, right? Things like Ariba and Concur and SuccessFactors, and the core ERP, they've got that locked down. But what about if you want to build your own AI models, or if you want to do data engineering, or if you want to do data warehousing on that data? When you marry these two, I think that's going to be significant revenue increase for SAP. Just maybe I can put it sort of our perspective on it at Databricks. We just raised $10 billion. And of that, we've actually earmarked $250 million that we're just going to invest in migrations onto this SAP Databricks. So we are, yeah.
I'm sorry I cut you off, but you were actually leading me to my next question. You did just announce a huge funding round. I believe it was a Series J, that $10 billion. What does this deal mean for Databricks going forward? And obviously, you have an ambition to be embedded in the enterprise, at the enterprise level, and work with more of these large enterprises, whether it comes to ERP or other functions.
Yeah, so of that $10 billion, we've actually earmarked $250 million towards just doing migrations into SAP Databricks. And why are we doing that? Because we think that this is going to drive $1 billion of revenue for us over the next few years. So we're very excited about this because when we talk to our customers, what they keep telling us again and again and again is, hey, I need the SAP data. What about the SAP data? It's very hard to get that data out of SAP. How do we process that with Databricks? We love Databricks, but the SAP data and Databricks, they just don't work well together historically, or actually any other data platform for that matter. So we really think that we can unlock a lot of value here. When we talk to our customers, they're super excited. Like, even every customer I talk to say, I would love, I pay anything to get this if we could marry those two together.
All right. Ali, you sound pretty excited yourself. You were talking about AI models just a second ago, so we got to talk about DeepSeek. A few weeks ago, huge shock to the market. It raised a lot of questions about the real advantage of scale and capital in this AI arms race. Also a debate about open source compared to proprietary models or closed source. So at Databricks, you actually use open source models. Now that we have a little bit of perspective, we have a little breathing room from that moment, have we truly seen a meaningful change when it comes to AI infrastructure, energy needs, and the sense of a value of having a moat through a closed source model?
Yeah, I mean, look, my joke is everybody's model is open source. They just don't know it yet. Okay? Because this technique called distillation, which lets you use outputs of models to train smaller ones that are smart, is just so powerful, especially in this new paradigm that we have that just started last year, which is called reasoning models. Models like O1 and R1 from DeepSeek, they are really good at reasoning. And this distillation process where you take the output of an existing model is so effective. For very few dollars, you can train a smaller model that has the same intelligence. Actually, researchers at UC Berkeley, for $450, were able to train a model that was almost as smart as OpenAI's O1 using outputs from it, using this technique. So we saw, as soon as DeepSeek was released, we had massive inflow of requests from our customers. They wanted to try it. And we really hustled to get it up on the platform, and we've seen massive shift over to it. So there's a lot of interest in the market around DeepSeek and those kind of models. But zooming out, what DeepSeek really did is train models that basically have data intelligence. Mm-hmm. They're really focused on doing math really well or programming really well. And I think this is the path forward. Data intelligence where you sort of, in a specific domain, an enterprise might have specific SAP data in their ERP system, and then you train an agent that's really good at that particular data, and that way it can become super intelligent just for that domain. And that's basically what DeepSeek did as well. They're really good at reasoning math, winning math contests, and so on. So I do think this is the paradigm going forward, and I think it's a paradigm shift in the market of what we saw happen this year.
Ali, you just said something, and I want to clarify. So you said customers were calling you about it, and they're using DeepSeek right now, their model. We've heard some other people that enterprises would be very hesitant to use a model that came out of China at the enterprise level. Are you saying that you're starting to see enterprises adopt it? And do they have any concerns about data security, potential corporate spying, things like that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. A whole bunch of our customers actually went all in and started using DeepSeek, and we were ourselves surprised. We thought that they would have some hesitancy because they have been other AI models from China earlier. One that's really popular that's called Qwen. Did not see the same traction in the past, and it's a pretty good model. DeepSeek seemed to have broken through the mold, sort of. But there are some customers of ours that are also really conservative, and they're like, well, we're not sure. Legal has to approve it. Security has to approve it. And what they are using is something that many people don't know, but you can actually take the Llama models by Meta, and you can distill those to have the intelligence of DeepSeek. And that's what we've done, and we've offered that. So the more conservative customers are using Llama distilled versions of this DeepSeek. So it's sort of a marriage between DeepSeek and Llama. So the core model is Llama, which is trained in the US. You know that the model is not doing anything weird. It just has this intelligence boost of DeepSeek, and that's also really popular.
All right, and just for clarity for people watching, Llama is also an open source model. I want to ask you one question. It might be tough to answer, but give us your most honest opinion on this, because I'm sure you have a lot of friends in some of these other companies. Has the emergence of DeepSeek, has it changed your view on the need for these advanced chips, or the amount of data centers you need, or the power that you need when it comes to AI infrastructure? Has that significantly changed specifically for your company and other people you're talking to?
I mean, I think it's early, but I think we know that it's going to change it. Exactly how we change it is going to change it, we don't know. But DeepSeek was trained on this sort of technique called test time compute scaling. It's a fancy word, but what it really means is that you use these models much more for inference. So that is asking questions from them rather than having to train them. So it shifts where the budgets used to go before to create these models, from this sort of baking and training them to this sort of just using them for inference. That requires a different types of infrastructure. You don't need really sophisticated networks. it also allows you to use these chips distributed, so you can have a few chips in this country, a few in that country. You don't need to have these gigantic, enormous clusters all in one place. So I do think it's shifting and changing the requirements on chips, on hardware, and so on. Exactly how, we don't know, but it's definitely going to change it.
So, I mean, just to be clear, it sounds like you're saying it's shifting away from the need for advanced chips. If everything that the makers of the DeepSeek model say is true, and there are some questions about the veracity of it, the amount of money spent, the time, the fact that they didn't supposedly have those advanced chips because of restrictions out of the U.S., doesn't that change the narrative on NVIDIA's dominance and the moat that it has, and also just the entire narrative on the need for these advanced GPU chips?
Well, NVIDIA is an amazing company. They have a head start. And I'm not saying you don't need their chips. I'm saying that you need different types of chips. You need those that are used for inference. So it's just the needs are changing quickly. Also, this belief that we need to have one gigantic cluster with all the GPUs very close to each other on a fast network, that's also changing with this paradigm. They could be distributed. So I do think if you go in and make huge investments in one particular setting of data centers, this shows that, hey, maybe that was not the best way to set up that infrastructure. Maybe you need to do it in a different way. So I do think it's going to be a paradigm shift. And, DeepSeek is the tip of the iceberg. This kind of started last year where people started looking at this new paradigm, and DeepSeek really kind of broke through and it kind of became the poster child. But we're going to see this again and again where people take an existing model and boost its reasoning using this kind of test time compute. And we're hoping to bring that now to the SAP data through this partnership. They are ERP data used to take existing open source models and boosting their intelligence on that particular data. That's what we call data intelligence.
All right. Ali, I want to pivot to some recent headlines, some news that was actually just made today out of Europe. J.D. Vance, the vice president, appeared at the AI Action Summit today in Paris. I would imagine a lot of your peers were there. His comments really focused on regulation in Europe being a headwind. He also mentioned that some of that regulation is actually a barrier for smaller companies. It actually gives bigger players an advantage. I want to know, did you hear his comments? I want to get your take on that. And also, is regulation in any way impacting any parts of your business?
Yeah, we are unaffected by it. And we're going to follow whatever regulation exists. And keep in mind, we're an international business, so we exist in different jurisdictions in different countries in the EU, United States, Asia. So we're going to adhere to whatever is the local jurisdiction. But what I will say is that with such fast changing technological landscape, any regulation kind of is lagging very quickly. Like last year, we had this executive order that sort of said that, by Biden, which said that, we're going to put limits on how big of models you can train. Well, we can see now with DeepSeek that that's invalidated. Even if they spent more than what they said, 5 million, it turns out in this new paradigm, you need much less compute and you really leverage data in these particular domains, and you can basically get an Olympiad, level mathematician or programmer. So I think the issue with legislation is just creates barrier, and who is it hardest for overcoming those barriers? It's the small startups. Okay, so to be clear, it doesn't affect Databricks. We can overcome them, no problem. We'll spend the money on lawyers. We'll do whatever documentation is needed, so we'll be fine. But if we want to spur innovation, we want the small startups also to be able to do this. A 5-person team, 10-person team, they don't even have a lawyer on staff to do this. So I do think we should be careful so early over-regulating it, especially when the technological landscape is changing so fast that whatever you put in practice, whatever burden overhead you put in place, it might be outdated in 3 months.
Do you agree with the Vice President that European regulation in particular is especially onerous?
Well, I grew up in Europe, and in general, I would just say that, European Union, has sort of pushed harder for regulation on many fronts earlier. And, there's been good with that. There's been some bad, there's downsides, upsides. But when it comes to AI, I think that, it's, if we want to be competitive, if European Union wants to be competitive, the United States wants to be competitive, I think it's, as someone who's, not biased, I grew up there, I just think that we're better off not over-regulating it so early before we exactly know what the boundaries are, how it works, right? Because some of these regulations, all this documentation that we put in place, it might not be relevant because, we're using a different technique to train the models. And by the way, whatever limits we put in place, that scarcity spurs innovation, so people figure out a way to get around it. So was it really worth it?
That leads us to our next question. What do you make of the current administration here in the U.S., its actions, executive orders, et cetera, when it comes to AI development?
Well, it's early days, right? We haven't seen exactly what it's going to be. But in general, I can see that there's a lot of a cautious optimism in the market and among AI companies, when it comes to the particular AI regulation or their approach towards AI. That we need to have more innovation, we need to invest more, and we should help both small companies and big companies, and it shouldn't be fair or unfair one way or another. So cautiously optimistic on that front.
All right. As you mentioned, it is very much early days, but in the few weeks that we've seen from this administration, do you believe that this administration is I guess for lack of a better way, a tailwind when it comes to AI developments in companies like yours? Is it neutral? You seem to paint the Biden administration as perhaps a bit behind the times and creating some roadblocks that were unnecessary. I don't want to mischaracterize what you were saying, but that's the way I took it.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, it's moving so fast, and there's a lot of interest from lots of, folks in the AI space that are sort of having strong opinions on what should be done from a regulatory perspective and so on. And, there's not just the Biden administration. There was also the EU AI Act. So there's been a lot of opinions on how to exactly regulate this. And I think now we're a couple of years into it, and we can be a little bit more measured and think this through rather than just rushing ahead, over-regulating it. So I think we're doing the right thing right now. But again, it's early days, and we'll see how things develop over the next few years.
All right, a lot of ground covered. Thank you so much, Ali Ghodsi, CEO of Databricks, for your time and your insight into this new partnership between your company and SAP, and also a host of other topics. We really appreciate that. And thank all of you for watching CNBC.com. I'm Frank Holland, anchor of Worldwide Exchange. Have a great day.